On a normal Tuesday morning, every screen on Earth suddenly turned black. Then, a tall figure with blue skin appeared. He wore a shiny uniform covered in medals. This was Supreme Commander Du Hyun of the Galactic Hegemony, but humans didn't know that yet. "People of Earth," he said in perfect English, "I am Supreme Commander Du Hyun. Your planet now belongs to the Galactic Hegemony. Surrender now, or face total destruction." In the United Nations Emergency Meeting Room in New York, Admiral Ji-woo of the Earth Defense Force stood up. She was a short woman with gray hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Despite the serious situation, she was smiling. "Send them our response," she said to her assistant. In his giant spaceship above Earth, Du Hyun waited for the humans to beg for mercy. Instead, his communication officer handed him a tablet. As he read the message, his blue face turned purple with confusion. The message said, "Dear Supreme Commander Du Hyun, thank you for your interesting offer. However, we have a better idea. Instead of a boring old war, why don't we have a competition? You choose some games, we choose some games. Winner takes all." Do Hyun looked at his second-in-command, Captain Sang-min. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked. Sang-min checked his data tablet. "Sir, according to our research, humans spend a large part of their lives playing games. They have something called Olympics where they compete just for fun. They even have people called professional gamers who play games for money." In the UN room, Admiral Ji-woo was explaining her plan to the world leaders. "Look," she said, pointing to pictures of the alien ships. "Their technology is more advanced than ours. But they've spent all their time building weapons. They don't know how to have fun." The president of Brazil raised her hand. "But Admiral, how will games help us?" Ji-woo's smile got bigger. "Have you ever tried to fight someone who keeps making you laugh? It's impossible. Plus, we have a secret weapon." She pressed a button, and a picture appeared on the big screen. It showed a group of people in different uniforms. Athletes, video gamers, musicians, and even a famous food truck owner. "Meet Earth's first line of defense," Ji-woo said. "Hae Newell here is our team captain. She's won 3 different Olympic medals, holds the world record in 4 video games, and once beat a chess computer by making moves so silly the computer crashed." Back in space, Du Hyun was having a crisis. If he said no to the games, he would look weak. If he said yes, he would have to learn how to play human games. After an hour of thinking, he made his decision. The screens on Earth turned black again. Du Hyun appeared, trying to look serious. "We accept your challenge," he said. "But know this, the Galactic Hegemony has never lost any kind of competition." Admiral Ji-woo watched the message with her team. When it ended, Hae Newell raised her hand. "Should I tell them we've already won?" she asked. "Why do you think that?" Ji-woo asked. "Because," Hae Newell said, "they accepted without asking what the games would be. And rule number 1 of any game is, never agree to play a game when you don't know the rules." Ji-woo laughed. "Send them the first challenge," she said. "Let's see how the mighty Galactic Hegemony handles a simple game of basketball, with our rules." As the message went out to space, Earth's team started preparing. The aliens wanted war, but they were about to get something much more dangerous. Humans who were ready to have fun. Captain Sang-min stood in Earth's biggest sports stadium, looking very confused. Around him, humans were running, jumping, and throwing orange balls through high metal rings. His data tablet was full of notes, but none of them made sense. "Excuse me," he said to a nearby human. "Why do they keep bouncing the ball? Can't they just carry it?" The human, a tall woman named Hae Newell, tried not to laugh. "That's against the rules of basketball," she explained. "Would you like to try?" Sang-min looked at the ball like it might bite him. In his entire military career, no one had ever asked him to play. The hegemony didn't believe in games. They believed in order, rules, and perfect behavior. Meanwhile, in the hegemony's main ship, Supreme Commander Do-hyun was having a different problem. His war council room had been turned into a humans called a game room. There were screens showing Earth sports, musical instruments making strange noises, and something called a food testing station. Report. Do-hyun ordered his research team. Commander Yoon-ji stood up. Sir, humans have thousands of different games. Some use physical strength, like this basketball. Others use thinking and planning, like this chess. And some, she paused, looking worried, some seem to have no purpose at all, like this thing called tag where they just chase each other. Do-hyun's face turned purple again. How do we win games that have no purpose? Back on Earth, Hae-Newell was teaching Sang-min how to dribble a basketball. He kept dropping it, and each time he looked more frustrated. But Hae-Newell was patient. The trick, she said, is to not think too hard about it. Let your body learn the movement naturally. Sang-min tried again. This time, the ball bounced 5 times before he dropped it. A small smile appeared on his face, then quickly disappeared when he remembered he was supposed to be spying on humans, not playing with them. In the Earth Defense Force headquarters, Admiral Ji-woo was meeting with her team. They had set up 5 challenges for the hegemony: basketball, video games, cooking, music, and a final surprise game. Remember, Ji-woo told them, our goal isn't just to win. It's to show them why playing matters. Each challenge must teach them something about being human. A young team member raised his hand. But Admiral, what if they're really good at these games? Ji-woo smiled. They might be, but they're playing because they have to. We're playing because we want to. That's our advantage. In space, Do-hyun watched recordings of human games. He saw people crying when they lost and cheering when they won. He saw them helping opponents who fell down. He saw them practicing the same moves thousands of times just to get better. I don't understand, he said to his empty office. Why do they care so much about these pointless activities? His computer screen showed him another video. Children playing in a park, laughing as they chased each other. There was no prize, no winner, no purpose. Yet they looked happier than anyone in the hegemony had ever looked. Down in the stadium, Sang-min finally managed to dribble the ball 10 times without dropping it. He looked up to see Hae-Newell smiling at him. Good job, she said. Want to learn how to shoot the ball next? Sang-min knew he should say no. He should return to his ship and report about human weaknesses. Instead, he heard himself say, yes, please. As he tried to throw the ball toward the basket, Sang-min didn't notice Hae-Newell sending a message to Admiral Ji-woo. Phase 1 complete. They're starting to have fun. The war games hadn't even officially started yet, but Earth's plan was already working. The mighty galactic hegemony was about to learn that sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight at all. It's to play. The day of the first challenge arrived. The massive stadium was filled with people from Earth and visitors from the hegemony. The aliens sat perfectly straight in their seats, while humans were jumping, shouting, and waving colorful signs. Tae walked onto the basketball court with her team. She was Earth's best player, known for her quick moves and clever words. The hegemony team came next, led by a tall alien named Hyewon. They were all at least 7 feet tall, with long arms that seemed perfect for basketball. Welcome to the first challenge. Admiral Ji-woo's voice boomed through the speakers. Standard basketball rules apply, with one addition. Talking to opponents is encouraged. Hyewon looked confused. Talking during sports? That makes no sense. Tae smiled at him. You look worried. Is this your first time playing against someone shorter than a tree? The alien blinked, unsure how to respond. In the stands, Captain Sang-min watched with interest. He had learned enough about basketball to know that the hegemony team's height should give them an advantage. But something about Tae's confidence made him nervous. The game began. The hegemony team moved perfectly, like a well-programmed machine. They passed the ball in straight lines and took shots with exact calculations. But every time they got into position, Tahi or her teammates would say something unexpected. "Nice shot. Did you calculate the wind resistance in here too?" Tahi called out after Q1 missed a basket. "Your form is so perfect, it's like watching a robot try to dance." Another Earth player shouted. The aliens started making mistakes. Their perfect movements became stiff. They kept looking at the Earth players, trying to understand if they were being insulted or complimented. In the VIP box, Supreme Commander Do-hyun was getting angry. Why are they letting words affect them? This is just noise. Admiral Ji-woo, sitting next to him, offered him some popcorn. "It's called trash talk. It's part of the game. Your players need to learn to have fun with it." By halftime, the hegemony team was losing badly. Their shots weren't falling, and they kept breaking their perfect formations. Q1 gathered his team. "We must ignore their words," he said. "We must stay focused." But in the second half, something strange happened. One of the younger alien players, after missing a shot, smiled and said to Tahi, "At least I can reach the basket without jumping." The stadium went quiet. Then Tahi laughed loud and clear. "Now you're getting it," she said, and gave the alien player a high five. The game changed after that. The hegemony team started relaxing, trying their own jokes, and even laughing when they made mistakes. They still lost the game, but they weren't angry about it. After the final whistle, Q1 approached Tahi. "I don't understand," he said. "How did you beat us? We were stronger, taller, and more precise." Tahi bounced a basketball to him. "Because you played basketball like it was a military operation. We played it like it was a game. That's why humans invented sports, to have fun." In the stands, Captain Sang-min made notes on his tablet. "Humans use joy as a weapon. Very effective. Must research this concept of fun more deeply." The first challenge was over. Earth had won, but they had achieved something more important. They had taught the hegemony that sometimes the best way to succeed is to stop trying to be perfect and start trying to enjoy yourself. Commander Yoon-ji of the hegemony sat in front of a large computer screen. Around her, 5 other aliens prepared their gaming stations. They had spent 3 days studying human video games, and they felt ready. On the other side of the room, Min-ho adjusted his headset. He looked ordinary, just a person who played video games all day. But in the gaming world, everyone knew him as the Wizard. His team had won every major gaming competition on Earth. "The second challenge will be a strategy game," Admiral Ji-woo announced. "Each team must build a civilization and either defeat their opponent or achieve cultural victory." The game began. Commander Yoon-ji used perfect military strategy. Her team built their bases in exact patterns. They placed every building according to mathematical formulas. Their army movements followed textbook military tactics. Min-ho watched them and smiled. He turned to his team and said, "They're playing like it's a real war. Let's show them how gamers do it." The human team did things that made no sense to the aliens. They built cities in strange places. They used farming vehicles to block enemy tanks. They even trained animals to carry their soldiers. "This is not proper military strategy," Yoon-ji complained. "Their tactics violate every rule of warfare." In the viewing area, Supreme Commander Do-hyun watched with growing confusion. Captain Sang-min sat beside him, taking notes. "Sir," Sang-min said, "I believe they're using something humans call cheese strategies. It means using unusual tactics that work because they're unexpected." On the screen, Min-ho's team had just defeated a hegemony base by dropping sheep from flying transport ships. The sheep weren't weapons. They just created so much chaos that the alien defenses couldn't target the real attack coming from another direction. Yoon-ji tried to adjust her strategy, but every time she made a perfect plan, the humans would do something ridiculous that worked anyway. They used music to attract enemy units into traps. They built towers in places that made no sense until you realized they spelled out hello on the map. "Stop this nonsense," Yoon-ji demanded. "Fight properly." "But this is proper," Minho replied. "Games aren't about following rules. They're about finding creative ways to win while having fun." As the game went on, something unexpected happened. One of Yoonji's younger officers started copying the human's strange tactics. He used construction vehicles to build a smiley face in the middle of a battlefield. When it worked as a distraction, he laughed. "Officer Yoonji," Yoonji shouted. "What are you doing?" "Having fun, Commander," he replied. "And look, it's working." The game ended with a clear victory for Earth's team. But more importantly, half of the alien team had stopped playing like military officers and started playing like gamers. After the game, Minho offered to teach Yoonji some of his strategies. To everyone's surprise, she agreed. "I still think your tactics are ridiculous," she said. "But they work. Perhaps there is something to learn from chaos after all." In his private room, Supreme Commander Do-hyun reviewed the game footage. "First, they beat us with laughter in basketball," he muttered. "Now they beat us with nonsense in warfare. What kind of species wins by not taking things seriously?" Captain Sangmin looked at his notes. "Sir, I think that's exactly what we need to figure out, because the next challenge is about food. And I hear their team leader is someone called the King of Street Tacos." The third challenge took place in a large kitchen stadium. Chief Imperial Chef Soo-jin stood at her cooking station, surrounded by advanced food synthesizers and molecular gastronomy equipment. She had prepared meals for the highest officials of the hegemony for 20 years. At the other station stood Jinwoo, wearing a simple apron with food stains on it. His only special equipment was an old wok and some wooden spoons. Behind him sat his famous food truck, covered in bright pictures of his street dishes. Admiral Ji-woo stepped forward to announce the challenge. Each team must prepare 3 dishes: an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. The judges will include both humans and members of the hegemony. Soo-jin looked at Jin-woo's simple setup and smiled. Her food synthesizers could create perfectly balanced flavors and ideal textures. Victory would be easy. The competition began. Soo-jin programmed her machines to create sophisticated dishes. Her appetizer was a perfect sphere of flavor that changed taste 5 times as you ate it. Her main course was a protein structure that assembled itself on the plate. Meanwhile, Jin-woo chopped vegetables by hand and stirred his wok over an open flame. His cooking station was messy, with ingredients scattered everywhere. But the smell coming from his pots made even the alien judges turn their heads. In the audience, Captain Sangmin sat next to Ainul. "Your chef is not using any advanced technology," he said. "How can he compete?" Hanul handed him a paper box from Jin-woo's food truck. "Try this first, then ask that question again." Sangmin took a bite of the simple noodle dish. His eyes widened. "This is irregular, imperfect." But he took another bite. "I cannot stop eating it." On stage, the judging began. Soo-jin's dishes were beautiful. Each plate looked like a work of art. The flavors were scientifically balanced to be exactly right. Then came Jin-woo's dishes. His appetizer was called Mum's Dumplings, not perfectly shaped, but steaming hot and juicy inside. His main course was a spicy stir-fry that made one of the alien judges cry with joy. His dessert was sweet rice cakes that he learned to make from his grandmother. When the scores were announced, Jin-woo had won. Soo-jin was shocked. "But my dishes were perfect," she protested. "Every flavor was precisely calculated." Jin-woo walked over to her station. "Would you like to know the secret?" he asked kindly. He took her to his food truck and showed her a small photo taped inside. It showed a family cooking together, everyone smiling. "Perfect food isn't about calculations," he explained. "It's about heart, about memories, about making people happy." He handed her a spoon. "Here, help me make the next batch of dumplings. The best way to learn is by getting your hands messy." To everyone's surprise, Soo-jin took off her formal chef's coat and put on a simple apron. As she learned to fold dumplings by hand, her perfect posture relaxed. When one dumpling came out looking wrong, she laughed instead of throwing it away. Supreme Commander Du Hyun watched from his private box, eating his fifth bowl of Jin Woo's noodles. "Captain," he said to Sang-min, "make sure we get this recipe before we leave Earth." Admiral Ji Woo smiled as she watched Su Jin and Jin Woo cooking together. "Food," she said to no one in particular, the universal language of friendship. The concert hall was filled with both humans and aliens for the fourth challenge. On one side of the stage stood conductor Hyun-soo with the Hegemony's Mathematical Harmony Orchestra. Their instruments were made of advanced materials that could produce perfectly tuned notes. On the other side stood Dae-sung with his band. Their instruments looked worn from years of playing. Dae-sung's electric guitar had scratches all over it, and their drum set had tape holding one cymbal in place. "The musical challenge will have two parts," Admiral Ji Woo announced. "First, each team will play their prepared piece. Then, they must improvise together." Hyun-soo stepped forward first. The Hegemony Orchestra began to play. Every note was exactly right. The rhythm never changed. The music followed perfect mathematical patterns. It was like listening to a beautiful machine. In the audience, Hae-Nul saw some aliens nodding in approval while many humans looked sleepy. Captain Sang-min, sitting next to her again, was taking notes. "Their performance is flawless," he said. "How can your band compete with perfection?" Hae-Nul handed him some earplugs. "You might want these," she said with a smile. Dae-sung and his band took the stage. He stepped up to the microphone and said, "This song is called Dancing with Aliens. We wrote it last night." The music started soft, then exploded with energy. Dae-sung's guitar wasn't perfectly tuned, but it screamed with emotion. The drums weren't in exact time, but they made people want to move. The singer's voice cracked on high notes, but it felt real and powerful. In the VIP box, Supreme Commander Du Hyun watched in confusion as humans started dancing in their seats. Even some younger aliens were moving to the beat. "This is chaos," he said to Admiral Ji Woo. "There is no mathematical pattern." "That's the point," she replied. "Music isn't about patterns. It's about making people feel something." Then came the improvisation part. Hyun-soo looked nervous. His orchestra had never played without written music before. Dae-sung walked over and whispered something to him. The strange mix began. The Hegemony's perfect notes met Earth's wild rhythms. At first, it sounded terrible, but then something magical happened. The alien musicians started following the human band's energy. They began playing their instruments in new ways. One alien violinist discovered she could make her instrument sound like it was crying. A Hegemony drummer forgot about perfect timing and just played what felt right. Hyun-soo himself began to smile as he conducted this beautiful mess of sound. When the music ended, everyone was standing and cheering, humans and aliens together. Dae-sung hugged Hyun-soo, who looked surprised but pleased. "But we didn't follow the composition rules," Hyun-soo said, still confused. "Sometimes," Dae-sung replied, "the best music happens when you break the rules." Later, Captain Sang-min made his report to Supreme Commander Du Hyun. "Sir, I believe I understand now. Humans don't try to be perfect. They try to be real." Du Hyun looked thoughtful. 4 challenges, 4 defeats, but somehow it doesn't feel like losing anymore. He paused. "What is the final challenge?" "They won't tell us, sir, but I heard it was suggested by their youngest team member." Do Hyun remembered seeing a small human child among Earth's team. "Surely," he said, "we can handle whatever game a child chooses." Captain Sang-min thought about everything he had learned about humans so far. He wasn't so sure about that. The final challenge took place in a large park on a sunny morning. 9-year-old Yoonji stood before the gathered crowd, holding a red ribbon in her hand. She was Earth's youngest diplomat, chosen specifically for this moment. Supreme Commander Du Hyun and his elite warriors arrived in their formal military uniforms. They had prepared for every possible combat scenario. But when Yunji explained the challenge, they stood in stunned silence. "The final game is tag," she announced clearly. "One person is it and must catch others by touching them. If you get tagged, you become it instead. No one is allowed to stand still for more than 10 seconds. The game ends when everyone has had fun." Captain Sangmin looked at his tactical manual. "Commander, there is no chapter about this form of combat." Do Hyun frowned. "Surely this is a joke. We are warriors of the hegemony. We do not play children's games." Admiral Ji-woo stepped forward. "Are you forfeiting the challenge, Commander?" The word forfeit made Do Hyun's face turn purple. "Never. Warriors, prepare for this tag combat." Eum-ji tied the red ribbon to Do Hyun's sleeve. "You're it first," she said with a bright smile. "Count to 10, then try to catch us." Before Do Hyun could protest, everyone ran away from him, laughing. Humans and aliens who had come to watch joined the game. The park became filled with running, shouting people of both species. Do Hyun stood stiffly, counting to 10. When he opened his eyes, he saw chaos. His perfect military formation was broken. His warriors were running in all directions. Captain Sangmin was hiding behind a tree, trying not to laugh. "This is not proper military procedure," Do Hyun shouted, starting to run after the closest person. "That's the point," Yunji called back, ducking under his attempt to tag her. "There are no proper procedures in tag." As the game continued, something changed in the aliens. They stopped moving in straight lines. They started making quick turns and silly dodges. When someone got tagged, they laughed instead of feeling defeated. One of Do Hyun's most serious officers, after becoming it, pretended to be a scary monster chasing others. Everyone played along, screaming in fake fear and running away. Even some of the watching alien diplomats joined in. Hanul found Captain Sangmin behind his tree. "Having fun?" she asked. "This is most irregular," he replied, but he was smiling. "I have not run without a military purpose since I was a small child." "That's exactly the point," Hanul said. "Sometimes we need to remember how to play like children." In the middle of the park, Supreme Commander Do Hyun was chasing Yunji. She was quick and kept slipping away just as he got close. But instead of getting frustrated, he found himself enjoying the challenge. Finally, he caught up to her and tagged her shoulder. Instead of claiming victory, he found himself laughing with her. It was the first time anyone in the hegemony had heard their Supreme Commander laugh. "I believe I understand now," he said to Admiral Ji-woo, who was watching nearby. "We have spent so long trying to be perfect warriors that we forgot how to be joyful beings. That's why we chose these challenges," Ji-woo replied, "to remind you of what you had forgotten." As the sun began to set, no one wanted the game to end. Aliens and humans played together, all thoughts of war forgotten. In trying to conquer Earth, the hegemony had found something much more valuable. They had rediscovered how to play. 1 week after the final challenge, Supreme Commander Do Hyun faced a serious problem. His mighty space fleet was not acting like a mighty space fleet anymore. In the main battleship's exercise room, warriors were playing basketball instead of combat training. The ship's kitchen was filled with aliens trying to make dumplings by hand. Music came from the engine room, where engineers had started a band with human instruments. Do Hyun called an emergency meeting with Captain Sangmin. "Report on the fleet's condition," he ordered. Sangmin looked at his tablet. "Sir, efficiency is down by 30%, but happiness levels are up by 200%. He paused. "Also, 300 warriors have requested cooking lessons from Jinwoo." "This is a disaster," Do Hyun said. But he said it while dribbling a basketball, something he now did when thinking hard. Admiral Ji-woo requested a meeting with Do Hyun that afternoon. She found him in his office, where he had replaced his war maps with pictures of Earth's sports teams. "I believe it's time we discussed the real victory here," she said. Do Hyun nodded. "We cannot wage war on Earth anymore. My warriors are too busy learning Earth games and songs. Yesterday, my best commander missed a meeting because she was in a cooking contest. Exactly, Jiwoo smiled. You came to conquer us, but instead, you found something better than conquest: friendship. At that moment, Yunjud ran into the office, followed by several young aliens. Supreme Commander, she called, will you play tag with us? We invented new rules. Do-hyun looked at his schedule. It was full of military planning meetings. He erased them all. Yes, he said. Teaching me these new rules is now an official diplomatic meeting. The next day, Do-hyun made a galaxy-wide announcement. The hegemony would not be conquering Earth. Instead, they would be starting the first intergalactic cultural exchange program. Hanul was appointed as the program's leader. Her first action was to organize the Galactic Games, like the Olympics, but with teams from 1,000 worlds. She made sure every competition included both serious sports and silly games. Captain Sangmin became Earth's first student in the exchange program. He started teaching alien children how to play Earth games while learning alien sports in return. His reports now included phrases like "had fun" and "everyone laughed." Jinwoo's food truck was given a space engine. He traveled across the galaxy, teaching aliens how to cook with their hearts instead of just their technology. His dumplings became famous on 17 planets. Dae-sung and conductor Hyun-soo formed the first human-alien band. Their music wasn't perfect, but it made people happy across the galaxy. They called their style cosmic fusion. In the end, Admiral Jiwoo's plan had worked better than anyone expected. Earth had not just avoided war. They had made the galaxy a more joyful place. 1 year later, Supreme Commander Do-hyun stood on the stage at the first Galactic Games opening ceremony. He wore a colorful sports uniform instead of his military clothes. When we came to Earth, he announced, we thought we were superior because we were perfect. Earth taught us that being perfect isn't as important as being human, or even as important as learning to play like humans. He then tied a red ribbon to his sleeve, smiled at the crowd, and said, everyone run. You're all it. The greatest game of tag in galactic history began, and not a single person talked about war ever again.